Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's Food for Thought seminar, which is all about the Pathogen Surveillance in Agriculture, Food and Environment programme, PathSafe. PathSafe was a UK-wide cross-government programme of work that ran from 2021 to 2025 and had the aim of improving the national surveillance system for the monitoring and tracking of foodborne pathogens and antimicrobial resistance. Over its time, the programme delivered over 30 projects and explored novel methodologies, approaches, and tools, and generated lots of new data and knowledge, including a new genomic data platform. So, here with us today to tell us all about this exciting program and the lessons learned along the way. We're very grateful to have with us Elaine, who was the senior project manager for PathSafe, and Laura, who is a senior social science researcher at the Food Standards Agency. So without any further ado, I will hand over to them and they can get started with the presentation.
Thank you so much, Liam. Just one moment and I grab the slides. Hopefully those should appear momentarily for you. Can I just get a confirmation that you can see them, Liam? Yep, all good, thank you. Okay, so I think with that we will kick off. So my name is Elaine and I'm Biosurveillance Team Lead at FSA and former Senior Project Manager on the PathSafe programme, as Liam said. And I'm going to start the talk today with some background on PathSafe. So PathSafe stands for Pathogen Surveillance in Agriculture, Food and the Environment. And it was an FSA-led cross-government and cross-sector biosurveillance research programme, the aim of which was to pilot a better national surveillance system for the monitoring and tracking foodborne pathogens and AMR in the agri-food system. But before I tell you about PathSafe, why was PathSafe of importance and why did we do it? Well, foodborne disease is a major public health risk, with the majority of human foodborne disease caused by a relatively small number of known pathogens that in most cases enter the food chain from farmed animals or the environment. And on top of this, the agri-food supply chain poses a risk for the transmission of AMR through food, animals, humans and water. So this risk posed by foodborne disease and AMR highlights the importance of being able to quickly detect and identify pathogens early and to accurately trace outbreaks to their source to support public health and reduce the economic impact of outbreaks. So PathSafe was set up to build on and enhance current surveillance systems, seeking to forge new ground in this challenging and cross-cutting area through innovation and collaborative cross-government and cross-sector working. The programme was supported in the main by the HMT Shared Outcomes Fund, and it saw an overall investment of around £24 million over a 4-year period. It brought together experts in human, animal and environmental health from across all sectors. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see the original government partners involved in the co-design and inception of the programme. However, the collaboration grew substantially as time went on, and I'll say a bit more on that later. So the programme was organised into 4 main thematic work streams, which you can see on this slide on the left-hand side. And alongside project delivery in these areas, a programme evaluation was also undertaken, and we'll come to say a bit more on that later. So zooming out a level further from those 4 work streams, you can see here on the right-hand side of the slide, a high-level picture of the areas of work the programme covered. In terms of summarising the results, however, we found it most helpful to group the programme outputs into 3 interconnected themes. So at the bottom, there's methodology, approach and tool development. On top of that comes the data and knowledge generated from the use of these. And finally, at the top, we have systems for bringing data together. And I'll refer to these again later on. So zooming out even further than that, this slide illustrates all of the individual projects and areas of work delivered as part of PathSafe, of which you can see there's a lot. So from the original ambitions that were set out in the bid that was made to HMT in 2021, over 30 different pilot projects were established and delivered, all with the collective aim of exploring opportunities to monitor and track both foodborne pathogens and AMR in a variety of settings across the agri-food system. And there's a lot to take in here, I appreciate, but the aim is really to illustrate the breadth and the depth of the programme, and also importantly, the spread of projects across the One Health spectrum. And I think this slide is also helpful to highlight how incredibly difficult, if not impossible, it would be for one specialism or area to try to do this work alone. And I think it gives that perspective on the huge amount that was achieved in a relatively short space of time during the programme, thanks to the inclusive and collaborative approach that was taken by the programme partners. So that brings us to a related and important aspect, which would be remiss of me not to mention, and that is collaboration, which has been an absolutely crucial underpinning enabler to the programme. So the PathSafe collaboration started with the 9 departments and agencies that were involved in the bid, and then grew to more than 65 partners and over 200 stakeholders involved in a variety of different capacities, who were brought together from across government, academia and industry and worked together to co-design and deliver that suite of projects that I just showed. And again, appreciating that this is a very busy slide, but the aim here is to give a sense of the scale of the collaboration involved, which was cross-sector, transdisciplinary and for nation, and had inclusivity at the heart of its approach. So this collaborative approach also extends to other programmes and biosurveillance initiatives. So when PathSafe started in 2021, the biosurveillance landscape was very different to where we are now. And as this landscape evolved and grew around us, PathSafe found itself working very closely alongside this cluster of synergistic programmes and initiatives, seeking to align with and support others working in the space. And we continue to do that now also post-programme. As you may be aware, PathSafe officially concluded just a few months ago, so in March this year, and it's been tough to summarise everything that has come out of such a vast programme, but this infographic seeks to highlight some of those key achievements at a high level, which have come from the programme in the short term. And this includes a broad range of scientific advancements, but also the collaborative side of things and the outputs and the benefits that came from things like its events and communities of interest. So, coming back to those 3 interconnected themes and looking a bit more at the question of what did the programme achieve. So something that you're all likely aware of from your own work is how achieving long-term impact takes time. And in this talk, I wanted to look at a few different examples of work from the programme, which produced benefits or supported decision-making in the more immediate term, but also some which show potential to yield benefits in the future. So on that first theme of bringing data together, I wanted to mention the Genomic Data Platform. So the platform was created to address the need for a national cross-government genomics capability to support pathogen surveillance. And it seeks to support identification of pathogen strains and elucidation of transmission pathways, aiming to provide actionable intelligence upon which the government agencies involved in the monitoring of foodborne pathogens can act. So the system was developed as part of the programme in collaboration with a number of other government agencies and academic partners. And I'm pleased to say that the system is now available for use by those partners for the analysis of a number of pathogens, as well as associated AMR. So creating this system was a big endeavour, and there is more to do to enable it to be adopted as part of usual response processes. However, the follow-on piloting efforts that are being led by FSA this year in collaboration with the project partners aims to take us a step closer along this path towards realising the benefits of the platform. On the theme of new knowledge and data, PathSafe projects have produced a variety of data sets on foodborne pathogens and AMR across a variety of settings, including aquatic environments, abattoirs, care homes and hospitals. To give some specifics as part of the programme, 8,300 new samples were collected, and additional analysis was done on around 2,500 routine samples. Over 10,000 archived samples and isolates were analysed, and more than 18,000 new genome sequences were produced overall. And as much as possible, the whole genome sequence data that was produced has been put into public repositories such as PubMLST, Interabase and NCBI to make it available for others to use. In addition, PathSafe projects have produced a large range of knowledge-based outputs, such as journal articles, project reports, and conference presentations, spanning the One Health spectrum. And these include both technical and scientific knowledge, as well as operational knowledge of how to deliver a large cross-government surveillance programme. And we're using the PathSafe website as a repository for all of the programme's public-facing outputs. So you can see everything that's been published so far there. And we'll share a link to that website in the chat shortly. So thinking about the so what around this, what impact has this data and knowledge had? Well, we know from programme evaluation that evidence produced by the programme has informed future surveillance priorities and decisions in a number of ways. For example, surveys involving beef cattle, sheep, and imported livestock all generated data which aided decision-making and prioritisation of future surveillance priorities and activities, ultimately enabling more efficient use of resources in those areas. Alongside these examples of where PathSafe outputs have directed decision-making, and there's also the example of the National Milk Lab bulk milk AMR testing project. So this project is aimed to assess the feasibility and efficacy of bulk milk tank biosurveillance with national coverage. And the project was a success and enabled piloting of a new approach which built upon existing sampling infrastructure and generated data on the prevalence of foodborne pathogens and AMR in bulk milk, which is now available to inform decision-making and risk management in the future. Importantly, the project was also able to make a valuable contribution towards the highly pathogenic avian influenza investigations in dairy cattle in Great Britain last summer by informing feasibility of the use of bulk milk tank surveillance. So the data generated from the pilot allowed officials to decide on the use of this approach to rapidly assess the presence of the pathogen in dairy cattle, which is something that was being implemented in the US and was regarded as the best option given the potential for national coverage. However, the feasibility to implement the approach in the UK was unclear at that point. And the work from this study offered that insight and meant that the approach could be quickly utilised as part of the response investigation in Great Britain. So coming on to the third theme of methodologies, approaches and tools, a number of PathSafe projects aimed to improve the methods and tools available for biosurveillance across different settings in the agri-food system. And those projects did this in different ways, by improving on, adapting and validating existing methods, by producing new methods, and by providing proof of concept for the application of particular approaches in new settings. And the list of areas where methodological advances were made as part of PathSafe is quite broad, so I won't read them all out, but the list on the right-hand side of this slide summarises those wide-ranging areas. So to come back again to the so what question, what impact have these tools had, or how have they been used? There's several examples of work from this space where methods or approaches developed or progressed as part of PathSafe have brought benefits in the immediate term or show strong potential to influence policy making. So the first example I've included here is work done by Bangor University in Wales. This was a regional-based study looking to quantify AMR and bacterial loads in hospital and community-derived wastewater and receiving environments to better understand the persistence of AMR genes in water coming from wastewater treatment plants. And the project produced a number of findings which together highlight the importance as well as the utility of wastewater surveillance in monitoring environmental and public health risks. And it also offered evidence of a potential link between wastewater discharges and the contamination of local shellfish, highlighting the importance and the benefit of taking a One Health view to biosurveillance research. The second example is a surveillance study completed in a care home setting by Queen's University Belfast, which looked to test the feasibility of employing different sampling methods to conduct surveillance in this setting. So the results of the project filled important gaps in our knowledge of AMR and foodborne pathogen prevalence in care homes, as well as the care homes' potential contribution to the flow of AMR between humans and the environment. However, it's also an example which demonstrates how biosurveillance data can be connected to immediate action and bring immediate benefits. So when pathogens requiring action were detected through the monitoring, the team were able to respond quickly with increased infection control measures, such as mask wearing or enhanced cleaning. And though it wasn't tracked systematically, the care home reported a significant decrease in staff sickness in areas and a corresponding infected areas and a corresponding reduction in agency staff costs as a result. So the project offers a good example of how looking at and engaging with biosurveillance data generated locally in a setting like that offers the potential to aid decision-making and inform immediate action. So finally, PathSafe's achievements have also been acknowledged more widely. The programme has informed and been cited in strategies such as the UK Biological Security Strategy and the AMR National Action Plan, as well as in major research reports such as the most recent VARS report and the recent National Audit Office report on how government is working to address AMR. So the programme has clearly demonstrated the importance of taking a One Health approach to biosurveillance, and importantly, what can be achieved by working as a collective. And that approach is translating across to our ongoing work within FSA, some of which has come off the back of PathSafe, and I'll tell you more about later. And it's evident in the ways of working of other synergistic initiatives too. So I hope that this has been of interest and given you a good overview of PathSafe's projects and what they've accomplished. And I'm next going to hand to my colleague Laura, who's going to say a bit more about some of the successes and challenges that we've experienced in the programme, as well as some of the recommendations that came from the programme's evaluation.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm just going to quickly take control of the slide. Perfect. So an evaluation was conducted in tandem with the delivery of the PathSafe programme. And as part of this, a theory of change was developed to provide a framework to understand the how and the why of the PathSafe programme is expected to achieve a number of its desired outcomes and impacts. And the theory of change you can see on this slide here. So at this point in time, with the programme concluding earlier this year, we're currently on a pathway to outcomes, which we would expect to see around 2 to 5 years after an intervention has concluded. Some of these outcomes include strengthening data sharing and coordination, improved understanding of source attribution and infection threat of foodborne disease and AMR, to contribute to the enhancement of existing surveillance mechanisms to support a robust national surveillance infrastructure and improved monitoring, and help advance One Health ambitions of reducing threats to public health and the ecosystem. And then further down the line, in around five plus years, we would hope to see that PathSafe has continued to contribute towards these longer term impacts, and ultimately aiming to see a reduction in foodborne illness and commercial losses as well. Now we'll take a bit of a closer look at some of the successes of the programme. So having a dedicated programme management team allowed for dedicated coordination and facilitation of connections. So acting as a main point of contact for the programme ensured consistent focus and momentum throughout the life cycle of the programme. The 4 work stream structure evolved to incorporate over 30 projects and pilots to ensure that the programme delivered on its ambitions, evidencing the scale of expertise and resource needed to deliver the pilot of a national surveillance system. These robust governance mechanisms were also established, and these helped to provide a framework to support with cross-workstream learning and transparency. The successful collaboration of the programme relied on a division of labour and strong collaboration across delivery partners, tapping into diverse strengths and resources. And given the size of the collaboration, the central management team had to work to ensure these open lines of communication were maintained. And some of the things that helped to achieve this were clearly established shared outcomes. So ensuring that all of the partners bought into the overall programme aims was essential. And a clearly defined theory of change, as we just saw, co-developed with the partners, also helped to ensure this alignment. We had focused forums, so we had a number of different forums, including delivery and strategy boards, advisory groups, and communities of interest, which all helped to streamline this engagement. Promotion, something which is often overlooked but is vital. So having partners from across the programme championing the work of PathSafe helped to spread the message across a variety of departments and organisations. Generating robust evidence and new knowledge. So the biosurveillance landscape has evolved rapidly throughout the life cycle of the programme, and as such, the team had to stay responsive to ensure that the evidence remained relevant and usable. And while at the time the development of project briefs was not the most exciting task for our partners, they ultimately provided a solid foundation on which to build the programme and to maintain this focus throughout. Lastly, funding and resourcing. So coordination was essential when it came to innovation, which is sometimes overlooked. And innovation happens when the right people come together, and this coordination helped to facilitate this. Now, while the programme had achieved many successes, it also experienced some challenges along the way, the first of which was its funding and resourcing. So the programme's ring-fence funding from HMT rather than departmental budgets was beneficial in ensuring financial protection. However, this also established some restrictions as well, such as the inability to reprofile funds across financial years, which posed challenges, especially given the somewhat unpredictable nature of scientific research. And these constraints required ongoing management throughout the lifetime of the programme. Linked to this was recruitment. So while hiring subject matter experts helped to secure the necessary expertise to deliver on these projects, recruitment freezes and long lead times have been barriers throughout the programme. And procurement as well. Standard government procurement processes can be slow and restrictive, particularly in research and development contexts. But to try and help mitigate some of this, some solutions that we identified in the programme were to identify existing resource that we had that could potentially be utilised or shared across the programme, and also to explore alternative procurement frameworks as well. Another issue that we experienced was different policies across government, particularly around data sharing, which caused us several challenges. So whilst the team worked hard to try and address some of these data sharing barriers throughout the programme, there's still quite a bit more to do in this space across government as a whole. So continued cross-departmental dialogue and work towards establishing clearer cross-government guidance on data sharing will be essential for any similar programmes of this nature in future. Communication and engagement with a wide stakeholder network, maintaining open and effective communication was essential, but also complex. Stakeholders were kept informed and were encouraged to contribute to discussions and decision-making through a number of avenues, such as regular one-to-ones and workstream meetings, monthly reporting, and communities of interest. But again, engagement was also challenging, especially during its initial discovery phases, due to the size and complexity of the civil service and competing priorities of stakeholders as well. Finally, the changing landscapes, as I mentioned earlier, since the programme began, the biosurveillance landscape has continuously evolved, with new strategies and programmes emerging consistently. And whilst each initiative had unique aims, overlaps and potential duplication did become apparent. And to help avoid this duplication and ensure effective use of resources, the programme team supported coordination by sharing insights and lessons learned. And based on the experience from the programme, we believe that a central coordination function would be highly valuable to ensure cohesion and avoid duplication across the biosecurity landscape. Now that we've talked through some of the successes and challenges, we also have some recommendations. So one of the key successes of the programme was the ability to coordinate between these different projects and build relationships across the surveillance partners. And as I mentioned, this was facilitated by a strong central management team with the shared ring-fence funding and shared meetings and targeted events to help create a shared awareness and sense of purpose throughout the programme. These supporting factors should be incorporated into future surveillance initiatives and the wider approach to One Health surveillance in the UK. As mentioned on my previous slide, the data sharing issues are common across civil servants and across surveillance programmes as well. And while Pathsafe achieved some of its data sharing goals within the context of the programme, there were challenges that limited the ability to create cross-departmental and cross-programme data sharing agreements, which meant that sometimes the project struggled to make meaningful improvements as to how data is shared more broadly. And to help improve the efficiency of future initiatives, some things that potentially are worth considering is ensuring that there's a consistent interpretation of guidelines and regulations around data protection, linking data sets across sectors, and anonymisation of data at a high level within the UK could potentially help to avoid this issue needing to be addressed by each government department in turn and through bilateral agreements. Additionally, prioritisation of projects that can help improve surveillance in the UK should be conducted according to clear and transparent criteria and in line with departmental and wider government priorities around surveillance. This will help to ensure that spending and departmental action is coordinated and that outputs from separate projects complement one another to improve surveillance outcomes in the UK. And lastly, to ensure that there's a strategy in place to detail how any of these new methods that might be developed will be incorporated into business as usual. I'll now hand back over to Elaine, who will take you through some of the forward look.
Thank you, Laura. I'll just take back control of the slides. So we've covered what Pathsafe has achieved and what we've learned from it. And in this final section of the talk, I'm going to do a bit of a forward look on our plans for the future, which will incorporate some of those learnings that we've had from Pathsafe. So a key aspect of One Health is that it's quite challenging to do, essentially. And whilst Pathsafe made some clear strides in developing One Health approaches and other synergistic initiatives like GAPDC, NBN, UKMFC that are operating in this space at the moment are also making huge strides, ways of working are still evolving really, and it continues to be an area that can be quite difficult to work in. But from our experience, we've identified 3 key areas that we think we as a One Health community should be focusing on for the future, which are essentially money, data, and trust. So we need funding to engage in One Health. We saw from our experience in PathSafe how important it is to have appropriate ways in which funding can be ring-fenced, but without creating inflexibilities. And we also need to consider how we can create a sustainable and more stable position with regards funding, which would ideally mean working in multi-year cycles rather than one-year cycles. Data is and will continue to be so central to One Health, and putting time and effort into how we share data in the One Health space is becoming increasingly important. So this means having the right tools and infrastructure for sharing, as well as the policies and the frameworks to enable it. And we know from our experience of PathSafe that data sharing remains a persistent issue across government, and this is a big part of what we want to try to continue to work on into the future. Finally, trust. I'm sure many of you will identify from your own areas of work that collaborative working requires trust and relationship building. It requires people to be on the same page about what they're doing effectively, to avoid the siloed ways of working that can sometimes naturally occur. So thinking about how we're looking to take things forward, we, like all of the original government PathSafe partners, have, since the programme concluded earlier this year, been thinking about areas of focus for the future. And for the purposes of this talk, we'll focus on what FSA are looking toward, which builds on those 3 thematic areas that I mentioned. So in terms of what PathSafe was trying to achieve, it was very much in the piloting space. It was novel and innovative and potentially high risk of failure in some areas. But importantly, it created opportunities to push boundaries and work at the cutting edge. And the work that we discussed earlier was just some of the successes that have come from taking this approach. Part of what PathSafe gave us is a kind of a blueprint for an integrated future food surveillance system. So starting with doing effective surveillance across government, through which we can generate the data that we need, and then being able to analyse and to share that data to generate insights and actionable intelligence. And then finally, to produce the data that we need to continue to build and enhance our capabilities and testing methods, which will in turn feed back to inform and support future sampling and surveillance efforts. And thinking about this brought us to the question of how do we build a sustainable, future-looking programme that has national impact and ultimately in time would cut across all 4 nations. So from this has come the Food Surveillance Programme, the aim of which is to build an effective, resilient and sustainable programme of food surveillance. So with resilience and sustainability, the resilience and sustainability aspect being really crucial to this, to ensure that the system has that longevity built into it. The purpose of the programme is to deliver the sampling evidence that we need at the FSA now and in the future. And the approach that we're looking to take is to create a single coordinated programme which brings together the different strands of FSA's sampling efforts and associated biosurveillance infrastructure activities to bring those together. So there will be 4 key pillars to the programme in the long term, which are sampling, our laboratory capacity and testing capabilities, and enabling infrastructures such as expertise and skills and tools like data analysis systems. And I just wanted to point out that when I refer to surveillance, that in the immediate term, in this financial year, we're referring to food safety, which is foodborne disease and associated AMR and authenticity issues. However, in the future, from next year onwards, we'll be looking to incorporate additional surveillance elements. So the core design principle behind the future programme is essentially to build on existing surveillance work, so not reinventing the wheel, as lots of the components already exist. And it's about maximising what there is to its full extent and making sure that it has that connectivity and alignment with the work of other partners in government, such as DEFRA and UKHSA, and also that it aligns and feeds into cross-government strategies like the biological security strategy. As well as building on PathSafe, we also want to utilise legacy of previous initiatives like the FSA Future Labs Phase 2 programme. To support the programme, we're aiming to utilise internal funding, so our own FSA core budget, But as we did with PathSafe, we'll also be looking for external opportunities like the Integrated Security Fund, which is part funding the work of the programme this year. And we're hoping we'll be able to access that in future years also. And finally, a core objective will be to proactively maintain relationships and grow our partnerships. So during PathSafe, we saw that the programme was clearly something that people were brought together by it and convened around. And we're keen that as part of this programme to find ways to identify and create those same opportunities for collaboration so that we can facilitate cross-pollination of ideas and find opportunities for complementarity and alignment with colleagues leading synergistic initiatives and working across the One Health space. So what is our ambition and what does success look like in the long term? So first of all, we need a resilient system and a resilient and sustainable lab capacity so that we can deal with routine as well as major incidents. We want to have a comprehensive range of methodologies so that we can both accurately and rapidly complete the food safety and authenticity testing that we need to, an area in which work is already ongoing, but where we want to expand and do more. And also we want to be able to accurately and quickly identify new and emerging risks in the food system. I've spoken a lot about collaboration today, so no surprises that we want to work in partnership with colleagues in government and beyond to position food surveillance as a core part of a cross-government One Health approach to protecting biosecurity. Like PathSafe, innovation will be a big aspect of this programme too. There's lots of space to innovate with new advancements being made all the time and new technologies coming online, and also the likes of AI creating new opportunities to enhance our ways of working. And we'd also really like to innovate in how we resource and procure research. So there's the kind of scientific innovation, but also the operational and delivery side of things, and how can we improve how we do things in that space. There will also be a focus on innovating on the data front in particular, so seeking to find ways forward to access and share data in a timely and efficient manner. And finally, thinking about the skills and expertise that we need to do all of this. Do we have the national critical mass of scientific expertise needed to deliver this nationally and not just within the FSA? Have we got a talent pipeline? Are there gaps in it? And are we able to meet our future surveillance needs on this front? So these are all things that we'll be considering and thinking about what we can do about them. So coming on to the work being delivered this year in the programme, to give you a bit of a flavour of what we're working on at the moment. So we have three main work streams to the programme this year. These are data and tools, surveillance and on-site diagnostics. And just to draw out a few key things from this year's programme of work, as there's too much to try to cover it all in detail today. So in the data and tools work stream, we're looking to further the work done on the genomic data platform that I mentioned that was developed during PathSafe, seeking to move this more towards business as usual adoption by piloting the platform with the government agencies involved in the project. Also within this work stream, towards the end of this year, we'll be working with colleagues in ACE, which is part of Home Office and is an accelerated capability and delivery unit on a discovery piece, exploring potential avenues for the application of AI in the biosurveillance landscape. As part of the work stream, the surveillance work stream, we have a piece of work on S-Tech, water sampling and detection. So this project is linking up with colleagues in DEFRA and FERA working on brown rot, which is a plant pathogen. And we're piggybacking onto that work, taking a One Health approach as well as a sample once, test many approach. So we'll be utilising the water sampling framework that's been set up for that project and taking additional samples which will be tested for S-Tech using both novel and traditional methods. Another project in this work stream is a metagenomics piece connected to the IID3 study. So IID3 is being led by FSA in conjunction with Newcastle University and several other partners. And it's looking to estimate the burden and causes of infectious intestinal diseases in the UK population. And so we're looking to complement this ongoing work with a metagenomics piece, again, taking that sample once, test many approach, and seeking to build on that investment to date in that research to create added value and new opportunities for collaboration. Another really interesting and novel project taking a One Health approach is one on on-site diagnostics. So working again with DEFRA, but this time on their future Proving Plant Health project, and looking to add a food-focused component to that. So looking to learn from what's happening in the plant health space and also to work collaboratively to enhance the work and maximise the benefits. So another great opportunity for collaboration. There's also a couple of other interesting strands to the programme that I wanted to mention. So firstly, a couple of stakeholder engagement and dissemination activities. So we're looking to explore opportunities and pathways to developing a Northern biosecurity hub. So we've identified a location in York, in the York Biotechnology Campus, which represents a potential spot in the north of the country, which could be utilised to bring together a critical mass of labs, capabilities and skills, all connected to biosecurity. So we'll be looking to conduct some workshops with stakeholders to explore this as an opportunity, should there be funding to support something like that in the future. We'll also be looking to bring stakeholders together in the early part of next year for a conference to showcase some of the work that's going on across the biosurveillance landscape. And finally, the monitoring, evaluation and learning work stream. So building on the evaluation work done during PathSafe, which Laura spoke about in this presentation. This is a really crucial aspect to this kind of work, and we'll be continuing efforts to look at those emerging pathways to impact from this work, and using also the reflections gathered to inform our future efforts on the programme and to improve programme delivery. So very briefly, just to finish, to come back to that kind of long-term view. So in this graphic, you can see the 4 surveillance pillars of labs, methods, sampling and enablers, which are the overarching key areas that we're looking to focus on into the future. And these bring together key areas of work led not only by my team, the biosurveillance team, but also work led by the labs and sampling team in FSA. And the strategy and planning on this for the longer term vision is in development at the moment, but the focus of the work of the future is expected to be looking to enhance resilience and sustainability in labs and in the labs and method space. And as part of this, continuing to collaborate with colleagues across government on areas of shared interest and benefit, and working together to enhance how we do things, and looking at opportunities also to innovate and utilise new technology. So for example, the application of on-site diagnostics. On sampling, looking at enhanced pathogen surveillance that builds on the current regular rhythm of surveys. So thinking about how can we enhance that, considering our key interests and priorities, and also how they might change over time and responding to that. So I mentioned earlier that the focus at the moment is very much on FBD and AMR and food authenticity, but actually going forward, looking to expand that out to include environmental contaminants, for example. And also considering EU alignment, will there be opportunities in the future to do harmonised surveys with the EU as we have done in the past? So all things that we're looking at and considering for the future. And then finally, the enablers that will support an enhanced surveillance system. So what do our data systems look like? What do the data access pathways look like? Do we have the right skills and expertise? And if not, how do we improve that? And are we connected up and working in a collaborative and efficient way that aligns with a One Health approach? So that brings us to the end of this talk. So I'd like to finish by saying thank you very much for listening today, and thank you to the Food for Thought team for inviting us to present today. And if you have any questions at all on anything that I've covered, please feel free to get in touch with the team. Our email address is on the screen just now, and we will either answer your questions ourselves or put you in touch with members of the wider PathSafe programme, depending on the question. And also very happy, of course, to take any questions that there are just now.
Thank you so much. That was a fascinating talk. We have a few questions that have been posted in the Q&A. So taking them in order, is there a plan to repeat this project in the future after implementation of the changes arising from the programme to further evaluate the effectiveness and impact of the programme long term?
So I think that's like maybe a question partly around impact and evaluation. So Laura might want to come in to maybe comment on what we're doing in that space. But we're looking to not necessarily looking to repeat work that we've done, but building on the work that we did through PathSafe, and using that kind of legacy that's come from PathSafe and all of the outputs that have come out of it. So looking to take those forward and deploy them or advance them, or what, depending on the kind of space that they're in. So I think that's really what the food surveillance program, which is the kind of new program looking to the future, is looking to do. And I think alongside that, we will have that kind of monitoring and evaluation aspect that will, as we did during PathSafe, continually kind of keep looking at the program and what it's doing, and is it achieving those kind of great grand aims that we set out.
Excellent. Okay, so next, will you be planning on engaging with your national reference labs and monitoring labs to design and deliver the this food surveillance program?
Yes, I think is the short answer to that. So that would be a question more for my colleague Ollie that leads the labs and sampling team, but I think yes is the safe short answer to that.
Excellent. The food surveillance, does the food surveillance program include policy officials to put the evidence into action as it is being produced, or will the program outputs be used only after the program has concluded?
No, I think I would say that we very much want to kind of engage quite dynamically with people. We don't want to kind of wait, till the end to kind of deliver outputs and go, here you go. I think it's more about trying to engage with people and understand what's needed in the space, in this landscape. What are the needs? What are the gaps? How do we enhance what we're already kind of doing effectively? How do we build on what we're already doing and enhance it? So I think we're very much looking to engage with our colleagues in policy across FSA and beyond to ensure that we're taking the right approach.
Perfect. Do you know if any other countries currently have a similar monitoring program? And if so, do you know how they're funded?
Yes, I think that's actually a great question, and one potentially to take away and think about, because we very recently had a conversation with colleagues in public health in Canada, which was very enlightening, and it was particularly focused on the data platform. And they spoke about how they've utilized their genomic data and how they've brought it together and the process that they've been through. So they're kind of much further ahead than we are on that front, where they have a centralized system where they bring this data together and interpret it. But yes, I think that's a great question, and I think one for us to think about as part of that kind of long-term planning for the future.
Excellent. So how do you decide which projects should be going through and which ones don't? How do you make those sort of prioritization decisions?
Yep. So we have, I guess there's kind of two main kind of ways at the moment, at present. So we, for looking to the future, obviously, we're looking to part fund the program from FSA core budget, but also looking for those external sources of funding that I mentioned. So with the seeking the FSA core budget, our ideas will go into the same pot as everybody else's, and kind of will be bidding for that research budget alongside colleagues, putting forward our ideas and the potential benefits of those projects, and so that will be managed in that way, and that will be reviewed through the standard business planning process that we have. For the external opportunities, I guess we have it's similar, but it's obviously done externally. So we would we're in the process of doing this at the moment, collate our bid for our project ideas, and putting that to the relevant kind of funding source. And again, it would be reviewed and triaged, and ensuring that it's a fit for that particular funding portfolio, and it would be assessed basically, against the relevant criteria, alongside any other bids that go in. So all quite competitive, so we are having to kind of like fight for this funding and having to work for it. But we've already, I think, had quite good recognition so far of the value of this work and the importance of food in this landscape and in the One Health space.
Thank you. Do you happen to know when the E. coli attribution work is likely to be published? And are there any other attribution studies that have already been published?
That's a good question, and off the top of my head, I don't know whether anything's actually been published because of the nature of that project being the output being a model, being a tool. I don't know if it's what is publicly available. So I'll take that one away, Liam. And if maybe the person who asked that one could reach out to me with their question, I'd be happy to reach out to the project lead, who is David Galley from the Roslin Institute in University of Edinburgh, and we can have a conversation.
Excellent. There's a question here as well that might also be a later conversation, but if anyone would like to collaborate on future grants, is there a person they can contact?
Yeah, so I would say to reach out to us again at our email address. So the work of the program is overseen by Shona Overarch, who's the head of surveillance in FSA. So she would be involved in this, very much involved in this process, but happy for people to use this email address to contact us in the first instance.
Excellent, thank you. Where do we find the final PatSafe report and evaluation report?
So Laura, you might be able to field that one.
Yeah, I've just popped a link just below that comment, but we've published it on our kind of research journal article. So there's a link to that comment below.
Perfect, thank you very much. And then we've got a couple more problems left, questions left, sorry. Bearing in mind this is a global problem, can you say how PatSafe is engaging with international pan-national programs? For example, tackling issues of sharing data and intelligence for quick tackling of issues throughout the supply chain.
Yeah, so we I can speak to how we did this on the genomic data platform in particular. So we were looking for we had, as part of the data platform, the development of the platform up to the end of PathSafe, we had a number of advisory groups as part of that work, which fed into how the system was developed, basically based on their best practice and recommendations. And one of those advisory groups was an international advisory group. So we were looking very much at international colleagues to learn from their existing systems and processes and how we could, I guess, learn from them and apply the most valuable parts. So yeah, I think very much looking to we have very much looked to do that on the FSA-led project. And I think, I guess, speaking on behalf of the partners in PathSafe as well, because PathSafe was such a collaborative project, that I think the partners across the program did the same and engaged with those colleagues working internationally in those areas on their work. So I think that international connection is very much there.
Sounds really good. We just have one more question from the chat. How will surveillance be targeted for maximum efficacy, and will there be incorporation of private data in that as well?
So this is, I'm sorry, I'm just reading back the question. Also, so I think that in terms of the design, that's still to be done. I think there's so again, colleagues in the labs and sampling team are really the leads in this space. They understand the complex sampling landscape across FSA and beyond. I think that there'll be conversations had and obviously relevant stakeholders brought in to inform the design and inform how improvements can be made. And as I say, it may be the case of not reinventing the wheel or throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It would be about building on and trying to enhance existing setups. In terms of private data, I can't speak to that point very specifically, so I could potentially take that one away to speak to colleagues about.
Thank you. We've got a few minutes left. I just had a couple of questions of my own, actually, if that's all right. You've generated so much knowledge as part of this project. I was wondering if there was any result that particularly surprised you.
That's that's such a tough question to answer because there's so much data. I think I would say the thing, and this is maybe not entirely answering your question, but I think the thing that I've really enjoyed reading that's come out of the program was actually the evaluation work, because I think it took that really broad view across the program. It looked at everything. It looked at our processes and how we delivered the program, and how we managed it, etc., and engagement with stakeholders, all the way through to looking at the kind of scientific side of things and the delivery on that side and the achievements and the things that I spoke about earlier, and how we'd achieve that kind of impact and the impact so far, and looking at those pathways to impact. So I think to me that was I guess and I think maybe because it was generally quite positive. I think the report, so a nice endorsement, I guess, of our efforts, and to see all our kind of hard work, I guess, being acknowledged from the program.
Yeah, it sounds really rewarding. And if I could just ask like one more question,
Of course.
what's looking forward? What do you see as like the biggest opportunity here? What makes you most excited?
I think I guess something that I mentioned during the talk, which is about kind of this positioning of food in the kind of One Health landscape, because I think through PathSafe we have seen that kind of gain just more and more traction, and we're, more and more often we're getting a seat at the table. People are approaching us. We're kind of seen, I think, as punching above our weight in this respect in terms of what we can do and what we can deliver and achieve. And I think that is really exciting, and I really want to see that kind of trajectory, continue, and to us to continue along that path. So I think that to me is really exciting.
Excellent. Well, all that it remains for me to say is thank you very much to both our speakers today. This has been an absolutely fascinating talk, and thank you very much to our attendees and for everyone who's posted in the Q&A with your very thoughtful questions there. If Just to let you know that this has been recorded, and we'll be sharing the link to that in our newsletter once it's ready. We did actually have a question, I think I remember, from someone who asked whether the slides could be shared after this event. If you're both happy with that, maybe that's something we could distribute through our newsletter.
Yes, I think that should be fine too. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everyone for attending. Bye for now. See you at the next Food for Thought seminar.
That's all.
Thank you.